10:07, standing still at Finch's store. A corner of a checkered cloth turned up, a white salt streaked like a chalk line, weighing a man. Thumbtack number 27 swayed in the wind. A man said,
"Take the debt ledger, not the person."
From there, the wind led you past the fence, past the fire, to the porch where a thin bell hung, just enough sound to know who belonged to whom. Night dew still clung in beads along the edge of the brick step. Up close, they lined up like rivets, dimly bright, cold. The concrete in front of the courthouse still bore the swipe marks from the morning sweeper, stretching like a thin furrow from the flagpole base to the landing. The flag had yet to rise, the pulley rope tapping against the steel pole with sparse, dry sounds. She sat low, her back against a faded green side door. A piece of cardboard lay flat across her knees, its edge frayed like a fish's mouth. She placed her thumb on the corner, pulled. The box cutter blade clicked out a short notch, the titch sharper than usual in the empty yard. The handle was green, speckled with old white paint. The smell of damp paper mixed with dried glue. She drew the blade along the fold so slowly the pulp lifted in fine threads. The word anything she had painted last night with an old marker now missed the A entirely. Not because she had erased it, but because the tear had bitten exactly into that corner. The rest of the letters remained, slightly blurred with dew. She tilted the sign, blew softly, breath visible, short. Across the street, a pickup idled. The engine's thick hum carried the scent of warm oil. A thin gray smoke slipped from the exhaust, curled once, and vanished. I stood inside the foyer, hand holding the door half open, watching through frosted glass. From where I was, the license plate was out of view. Only the low fog lights and the shape of the driver's shoulders, not bent over a phone. She held the cardboard steady with her right hand, slid the blade back into place with her left, a small tack. The blade was gone. I saw a brown scar on her index finger the length of a grain of rice at the second joint. Her nails were cut short, the white edges faint. On her wrist, a black hair tie faded to gray, looped twice. By the toe of her boot, a pink slip sat crooked on the brick step. A parking fine. The date printed in black ink. Yesterday. One corner had lifted like a small ear from the night's moisture. She set her paper cup over it, the bottom flattening the ear, the paper giving a faint sound. The cup was empty, a ring of dried black coffee inside like a round mouth. On its side the print read, "Have a nice," missing the last word. She pushed up the sleeve of her ash-gray sweater. One yarn strand had come loose, sticking out. Head looked at the letters left on the board. Her left hand spread open over the coffee steam that now smelled only cold. The courthouse's main doors were still locked. The sign showing opening hours was stamped with dry shoe prints, the words "official hours" muddled with mud. A woman in a red coat passed by, clutching files, high heels ticking a quick beat. She didn't glance at the steps. The yellow dog of the groundskeeper yawned in the corner, looked at me, then laid its chin back on its forelegs. The flag rope tapped the pole again, metal on metal, 2 beats. Across the way a car door opened, dry hinge sound. The man stepped down, shut the door with his elbow, stood for a few seconds, looking over. The wind brought the smell of leather seats with him. He didn't cut the engine. His head dipped slightly under the brim of his hat. On his coat pocket, a faint imprint where a logo had been removed, the stitching darker than the fabric. He didn't move right away. His hand went into a pocket, came out not with keys but with something brown. He folded it, slid it into another pocket. The pavement ahead of the doors still held a thin band of early light, narrow and cold. He took 2 steps, his soles stamping water onto the cement, leaving 2 aligned prints. I counted 4 of his breaths before he reached the curb. She didn't look up. She adjusted the cup again, so it sat square on the fine's center. Her fingers smoothed the cup's rim, like combing a child's hair. I heard the box cutter blade click out again. She set it against the groove in the side door's frame, inhaled. The blade slid back in. Repeated 3 times, 3 short, separate clicks without rhythm. As if checking whether her hand still obeyed. He said her name at just the distance for the wind to carry off half the sound. Sarah. He didn't call loud. He said it like calling a number at the post office. No extra feeling. She stopped her hand in midair, not surprised. Just paused, like a worker setting down a hammer, to listen to pipes. Her eyes fixed on the latch line in the side door. The metal was dark. She pressed the blade's tip there lightly, not prying. The morning light touched its edge, thin as hair. She pulled it back. Her thumb slid the blade into lock, the 4th tack sounding like a breath. She turned her wrist, put the knife back into her coat pocket, the green handle showing a sliver. He came 1 step closer. He stood a little to her right so as not to block her light, like someone stepping aside for a photographer. She reached her left hand into the other pocket, pulled out a marker. The tip was round, bristles splayed, cap missing. She tried to write an A in the empty corner of the cardboard. No ink came. She shook the pen 3 times, dotted it against do. Still nothing. She didn't sigh. She just coffee machine switching on. Water boiling through plastic tubes. Fresh coffee scent mixed with damp paper. The door I held had paint peeled at the handle, the wood beneath half a tone lighter, slick with hand oil. My nail scraped it, reminded me I hadn't worn gloves this morning. Small things like that happened every day. But watching those 2 on the steps made them rise to the surface. The pink parking fine under the cup slowly soaked through, the black ink bleeding leftward. The wind shifted. Leaves in the cement planter out front shivered. 8 o'clock still hadn't come. The lobby clock had been dead since last night. The minute hand stuck at 3. I looked at my watch. 7:38. No one hurried. He looked at the cup. He reached for his back pocket, took out a thin wallet. His coat was unzipped. Inside, a dark, worn sweater, collar frayed. He pulled out a $5 bill, folded it once, then again. He held it out. She didn't take it. She just slid the cup half an inch to make space. He didn't drop the bill right away. He set it against the ticket's edge, wedged the bill's seam into the damp paper like a small shim to keep the ear from lifting. No words. She moved the cardboard from her knees, propped it against the wall. The freshly cut edge lay flat. The letters, anything, stood mute on the gray background. She wiped her finger on her faded denim skirt, letting paper dust cling to the fabric. Her thumb trembled once, short, then stilled. I couldn't tell if it was from cold or from fatigue. He shifted his foot, shoes scraping over grains of sand. He bent down, picked up the marker cap I hadn't even seen near my feet, blew the dust off, held it toward her. She looked at the cap longer than she looked at him. She took it, fitted it into the groove, the small click, exact. The pen disappeared into her pocket. A person could live through several seasons on just a few sounds like tack and click. I thought, then let the thought go. A mail truck passed, side mirror trembling. A boy in the passenger seat wearing a baseball cap tilted back, yawning, holding a paper bag. They didn't stop. A sparrow landed on the flag rope. It shook. The rope struck the pole twice more. Inside, the coffee machine was silent. Would the guard come out? No. He always stepped out at 7:50. Today was the same. She lifted the cardboard, looked from a distance, the way a yard worker might eye a new roof. She tilted it left and right, testing if the missing letter could still be read. Without the A, anything became of the blade. No reply. None needed. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, wiped around the rim of the paper cup. When he was done, he dabbed at the edge of the parking ticket. The ink bled a little more, but the ticket's ear lay still. A heavy-set man in a checkered shirt opened the door to the late filings room, poked his head out, then shut it again. The hinges there always squealed. Today they squealed. I heard it. Anyone outside would not. She changed seats. From leaning on the door, she moved down to a lower step, both feet on the same rung, knees together, so the cardboard stood straight. The fabric at her shoe tip was worn, a small hole letting dew in. She tugged the laces tighter by one notch. The lace was frayed, fibers sticking out like broom hairs. She bit the lace end slightly to wet it, rolled it, tied a small knot. The movement quick, precise, like she'd done it 1,000 times. He watched that motion longer than needed, maybe for her hands, nails cut short, no polish. Maybe for the way she fixed fray without hesitation. Maybe because here in the morning, every sound had an edge. Car, flag, blade, sand, under soles. Everything fell into place. He stepped back once, glanced through the doorway frame where I stood. I let go of the handle, bent as if picking up paper. There was no paper. I just didn't want him to see me watching too closely. In towns like this, looking too closely is almost like touching. She tilted her head. For the first time, her eyes left the side door. They passed over his face without stopping. They stopped on the shadow of the flagpole across the brick steps, dividing them into two patches, cold and less cold. She put her hand in the dark half, then in the light, as if testing the difference. Nothing could be changed by hand now. She pulled it back into her pocket. He closed his collar, zipped one notch higher. Inside, the sweater rasped against his neck. He didn't ask if she was cold. He didn't ask if she needed anything. He stood there, holding the distance. Between them, the paper cup on the ticket and the $5 bill wedged in the edge. Enough space for two people to pass, or for neither to move at all. I felt the phone in my coat vibrate. A text from the court clerk. Judge 15 minutes late. I slipped it back. Moments stretched like the flag rope. Cold pole, cold dew, warm engine oil. These things layered without mixing. She lifted the cup, looked at its base. A ring of brown, dry. She set it down slowly, this time not over the ticket, but slightly to the edges worn, 3 initials engraved. He flicked it open, shut, as if checking whether his fingers remembered the sound. Then shut for good, put it away. The scent of lighter fluid passed, mixing with warm engine oil from the truck. She heard it. Her ear twitched. Her hand went to her pocket, touched the knife's handle. Didn't draw it, just touched to know it was still there. She looked down, drew in the longest breath since morning, not to calm herself, just to pull in the exhaust's warm air. For one moment she allowed. "Sarah," he said again, same tone. She turned to him. Their eyes met for the first time, not long. Her irises were dark, faint circles beneath. He gave a small nod. She didn't nod back. She turned again to the side door, pressed the knife tip to the latch once more, firm enough to hear metal meet metal, then drew back. Blade retracted, safe. She put it in her pocket, inner slot. I pushed the door wider, letting another draft slip between us. The flagpole gave one shiver. The rope tapped king, short. Footsteps came down the hall behind me. I stepped half aside, clearing a path. Out there, the two still stood exactly where they had, between a wet parking ticket and a cardboard missing its A. The truck engine idled. Dew streaked the steps. No one tells long stories on courthouse steps in the early morning. People just do small things. Smooth, flat, cut straight, set in place. Small things keep a person standing until the door opens. And while they wait, the sound of the knife clicking out, in, stays as steady as her own clock, neither fast nor slow. I heard it, he heard it, even the yellow dog heard it. No one said anything more. None needed. In this town, sometimes it's enough to know who is still standing, who is still breathing, who still keeps a crooked ticket flat with the edge of something steel. The rest comes later. The wind shifted again. Exhaust drifted toward the steps, warmer than dew. She closed her eyes for one breath, opened them, set both hands on her knees like anchors. He pulled his hat lower, shading from a sun that wasn't there. The distance stayed. By the time the rope gave a third tap, I knew it was 7:45. Things would move soon, but for now, both stayed. Late entry. He spoke softly, just enough to be heard. On time for pickup. She kept the distance. Her left hand took the card, the scarred index finger holding the paper's edge. He slid the second sheet forward with his thumb. The number 47 was printed slightly off-center, the red ink bleeding at the foot of the 7. She turned the card once, read the number again. No extra nod, no thanks. She simply tucked both sheets between her own cardboard, placed the empty paper cup over them. The cup tapped the card with a click. He watched how she weighted the paper with the lightest thing she had. The street was still wet. The flag rope struck the pole once more. He stepped back half a pace, restoring the gap to its original size. Then he turned away, the car door shutting dry. The engine stayed on. By noon, I saw the pickup parked 2 blocks from the supply store. He walked in, dry mud on his shoes. The glass door bore the words hardware, feed, rental, the R half peeled away. The bell over the door made a single dull note. Inside smelled of rusted steel, axle grease, and an old paper mustiness. The clerk, in a baseball cap, was flipping through a black-covered ledger. The book was thick, corners of the pages furred. He handed over some handwritten list I couldn't see. The clerk nodded, pulled another ledger, searched the section marked baking, used. That part was held with carbon paper. The entries read, rack 18 pan, 12 by 16, cooling grid. Using a wooden ruler to hold his place, the clerk read off the number of someone who'd dropped stock months before. On the back of a blank invoice, he wrote in pencil, name, number, a diagonal slash. Any used bake sets left? He asked. 2 sets, one complete with trays, one missing the cooling rack, the clerk said without looking up. He didn't haggle. He had the clerk write the number on the slip. The clerk stood, tore half an invoice, handed it over. No for who? No what for? The doorbell thudded again as he left. He slipped the paper into his inside coat pocket, didn't turn toward the diner. I saw the truck's tires roll over an old oil patch, leaving a curved print, like a hook. By afternoon, word was moving faster than his truck. At the barber shop, they said he'd picked her up. At the laundromat, they said she'd been at his house since morning. At the grocery checkout, they said Jake brought her home. The telling shifted from mouth to mouth, the voice dropping on the last few words. I knew he'd parked far off. I knew he'd walked into the supply store. I knew he hadn't gone near any place with mirrors or eyes. Still, the rumor grew legs. By day's end, the first rain of the season, exhaust fan stuttered. The screen door tapped its frame. She stood under the narrow awning, back not touching, her right hand in the sweater pocket holding the knife handle. Green handle, edge worn smooth. I saw her thumb move lightly, as if counting the teeth on the handle. She didn't draw it, just touched it to know it was still there. In the kitchen, fryer baskets leaned to drain. Cleavers hung blade in toward the wall. The trash can was full of onion skins and torn flour sacks. The air was old grease mixed with the morning's pastry scent. Martha passed by, headscarf damp with sweat, placing an aluminum basin under the leak. Drops hit center, a blunt sound. She shifted the basin half a handspan, the drop now hitting the rim with a thinner note. She didn't look at the woman under the awning. The woman didn't call out. Wind pushed the cold tarp against her ankle. She shifted feet, shoe touching a puddle, water seeping into the hole at the toe. She didn't pull back. Her left shoulder sat lower by half a finger's width, the cardboard in her pack off balance. She adjusted the strap once. Rain hammered the cement step, bursting into small white foam, flattening. She tipped her head back, counting the gusts that drew the rain curtain toward the roof's edge. The knife stayed in her pocket, quiet. Two teenagers ran along the sidewalk, T-shirts sticking to their backs, shouting something about last night's game. One stepped in a puddle, splashing the screen door. Their footprints faded almost at once. The kitchen bell rang twice, fried steak. Table 5 still uncleared. Martha's face didn't change. She pulled the basin another half-hand closer. She stayed that way another 5 minutes, maybe more. The hand in her pocket was warmer than the one outside. The knife handle was the only thing holding heat in her body. The drip kept time. I smelled rain meet hot oil in a pan, hiss once, then vanish. The neon sign over the awning blinked at the AR in diner. The next morning, the seal on the kitchen door was lifting at one corner. Expiry read, "Expires sat." Today was Thursday. Half the black letters worn thin. The glue along the edge had dried. The sticker leaned 2 degrees left. Someone had tried smoothing it. It hadn't worked. Martha set the shift roster on the freezer, beside an open can of baking powder. White card, marker-drawn lines, columns marked dishes, tables, oven. Beneath, on time, no phone call-outs. She laid the pen right on the edge, a cheap ballpoint. The ink often stuck. The woman came through the screen door, pushing it with her shoulder. The sweater dried slow. The denim skirt had a damp line across the thigh from yesterday's bike seat. She stood square before the roster, not looking around. Her right hand took the pen. It didn't write. It without touching the woman's hand. She wrote slowly. Sar Rach. Below. Oven 0530. The line ended heavy on the H, as if pressed. Jake stood outside the back door, one frame away. I saw his shape through the frosted pane. Hat brim down to his brows, hands in pockets. He didn't step in. She didn't look that way. She put the pen back exactly where Martha had placed it, tip facing inward. Martha drew a line through the last empty slot. Need 1. Prep. Thursday sat. Her voice was rough from the long night. She didn't ask if the woman was sure. She only lifted a tray of clean rags from the counter, handed over two. The rags were dry, edges frayed. She hooked one at her waist, set the other on the steel table near the oven door. The inspection seal looked at them from the door, crooked like a neck after a bad night's sleep. She lifted her eyes for a second, not to read the date, just to measure the slant. Then she lowered them, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a tray, scratched, the right corner bent upward. Her finger touched the scratch, paused as if recalling a crack on another piece of skin. Then she pushed the tray to the center of the table, straight edge facing the oven. The leak from last night had dried into a faint white salt mark up above. Martha handed over the aluminum ladder, said nothing. She didn't climb. She slid the aluminum basin close to the wall, flipped it over. The basin hit the floor with a dry thump. Martha gave one short nod, enough to mean acceptance. Outside the back door, Jake turned half away, left. His steps came heavier. He left a trail of warm air through the mesh door. No message, no glance. She wiped one square of table with a dry rag, pushed the old crumbs into a line. The crumb line was as straight as the mark she'd drawn for herself. 0530. From the tool rack's corner, her box cutter still lay in her coat pocket, balancing the pen she'd just used to sign. Two weights equal on either side. One cut paper, one wrote names. Both needed the right time. She passed the seal without touching it, just angled her body so the fan's air wouldn't hit her face. Martha swung the oven door once for smoothness, rubbed the hinge with a rag's corner. The milk delivery man walked through the kitchen, set the crate on the painted line. The lid gaped. Cold air slid along the floor. The seal stayed crooked. Saturday was still 2,000 minutes away if someone counted by drops. The leak hadn't returned today, but the salt stream longer than one syllable. Only the hour on the card, the hour of the oven, and the hour of the person due at 0530. In this town, even help had its hour. Rumors did not. But baking powder rose by discipline, and seals expired by schedule. The rest was the distance between two people on either side of a threshold, and the sound of a pen that had ink. 0527. The kitchen clock counted in red numbers, no tick. Outside, the sky not yet fully light. Inside, the tube light trembled at the socket's end. I stood at the hand-wash station, back to the wall, looking through the mesh door into the oven area. She came in through the back, shoulder-pushed. Sweater dry now, but the hem still heavy. She set her backpack on the stainless chair, zipper touching the chair leg with a thin sound. No greeting, no need. Martha was already there, headscarf tied, holding a brown hardback ledger. She nodded with her chin toward the steel table. On it, flour, water, salt, yeast. The scale was on, green display lit. Let me do a trial batch, her voice as ordinary as asking the time. Martha didn't say yes or no. She tapped the pencil tip to her tongue, drew a short line in the book, closed it. Her back was slightly stooped from a night in the kitchen. She pulled the square cast-iron pot to the oven's edge, tapped the wall, heard the clack. The oven door opened a crack, heat breathing out. She shut it, pointed at the 4 things on the table. Enough. She slipped off her watch, placed it beside the scale. Her left thumb touched the tare button. The number dropped to 0. She poured flour, 500, 600, 700 grams. Stopped at 720. Stepped back once. Scale back to 0. Salt, 14 grams. Yeast, 3 grams. Water, 480. She tilted the plastic jug for a thinner stream, stopped exactly at 481, then pulled 1 gram back with a fingertip, the finger damp and cold. No one spoke of the weather. No one asked if she'd eaten. Only the sound of a steel spoon scraping the bowl. The tabletop reflected her wrist, the brown scar at the finger joint showing faint. She folded her finger into her palm, opened it again. Flour coating in a thin layer. The movement was common in kitchens. Dusting flour, pulling the dough's heel, folding, turning, pressing. Each fold in 4 beats, each breath out, even. Drops hitting the same spot in the basin. At the door, the inspection seal still leaned 2 degrees, lower edge pointing toward the oven. She didn't look at it. She looked at her palm where flour traced the crease lines. With her second knuckle, she swept the flour into a row, then pressed her palm flat like holding paper in place. The movements were sure, not staged, more like a pipe fitter's. Few, certain. The dough went into a bowl covered with cloth. She placed her hand on the fabric, counting silently. I knew she was counting because a thumb tapped the bowl's rim exactly once per beat, 5 times, then stopped. Martha opened the sink, water running in a stream. She turned the gas valve under the fryer, a small put, then off. She stood looking at the oven door as if it were a large animal asleep. She looked at the dough as if at a wheel half buried in sand. Time moved on human breath. Steam on the oven glass shifted shape with the fan's rhythm. On the left table, a measuring cup sat upside down, a droplet clinging to the rim for who knows how long. 5:58. She peeled the cloth back a little, saw her handprint in the dough's surface, didn't move her lips. She took the green-handled box cutter from her pocket, pressed the button. Blade slid out an inch. She flipped the small screw on the body, removed the blade, brushed off the old flour stuck there, set it aside, pulled a new blade from a crumpled foil sleeve, thin metal, bright, edge straight. She fitted it in, pressed the lock. Tack. The knife became something else. Martha looked at the knife, then at her. No nod, no shake of the head. She slowly lined the baking tray with parchment, smoothing each corner flat. She divided the dough. The scale flicked to 240, 242, 238. She set 3 equal pieces on the tray like laying bricks, left hand holding, right hand rolling lightly, only to keep the surface taut. She lowered the tray to hip height, slid it into the bottom rack. Closed the oven. No slam. 6:43. In the kitchen, the first server came in, tied her hair back, looked at them for a second, asked nothing. She wiped her hands on the towel hooked at her waist, drew a deeper breath. No one spoke. All waited. I stood by the sink, remembering the sound of a flag rope knocking a steel pole each morning, and thought this sound was close to that. It had rhythm, metal, and waiting. She cracked the oven open just 2 fingers wide, flicked the spray bottle up, misted 3 beats into the oven's mouth. Steam hit steel, bounced back into her face. Clock jumped to 07:09. She tilted her ear, measured the inside sound. Her shoulders dropped a little. I thought those shoulders had thinned since a few days ago, or it was just the light. I couldn't measure. She opened the oven again faster. The bread smell hadn't set. The first batch had risen too soon. The scored lines had sealed over, steam not strong enough to pull them open. The belly in the middle white-scarred, like a scratch still drying. She didn't sigh. She didn't look at Martha. She pulled the tray all the way out, caught it in old mitts, set it on the table. The loaves were raw inside, crust dark unevenly. She scanned all 3, pressed a finger to the score, tested the spring. Her fingers stuck hot. She drew it back without flinch. She flipped the cardboard she always carried, took the pen from beside the scale, wrote 3 words. My fault, 07:12. The green ink sank into the board, slanted slightly. The my, smaller than fault, as if measured on purpose. Martha looked at the words, then at the clock. She lifted a new blade from a small box on the shelf, set it on the table beside her wrist. No push, no call. Metal touched steel with a dry sound. She took the steel ruler she'd left from the day before, pressed it along the crooked inspection seal on the door, tried to straighten. The glue didn't hold. She let go. The seal stayed crooked. She didn't try twice. She dropped the ruined batch into the compost bin without regret, kept half a loaf aside on the counter, not to eat, to look at. She underlined the words on the cardboard with 1 short stroke, no more than the length of the blade she'd just replaced. 07:15. I heard the ch-ch of a car at the alley's mouth, not to pick up. Jake didn't come. She went back to the table, the dough still in the bowl. This time she cut the water to 475. Left hand steadying the bowl, right hand pouring. The scale hit the number exactly. She didn't add a gram. She mixed harder at the start, then lighter. The sound shifted, sharper, shorter. She waited 4 minutes between folds, watching the clock each minute, her face unmoving. I heard the ceiling fan change speed, its wind tilting the drop of water still on the rim of the measuring cup from earlier. It fell, broke. Martha washed her hands, dried them on a cotton towel. She hung the towel in its place. She opened the oven, raised the flame 1 notch, then lowered it 1 notch. She didn't say she'd been wrong. She didn't say the woman was right. She only brought the box of blades closer, lid already open. Outside, the diner doorbell pulled in 1 motion from end to end, not stopping midline as before. The taut skin split clean, opening like sliding doors. No rush. No show. She sprayed water. Steam hit steel again, the note lower now. The oven was full of it. Her eyes narrowed less. Her hand held the door half open for 3 beats longer, then shut it. 7:27. I saw her hands had swapped places. Left nearer the oven, right nearer the spray. Not from handedness, from the lesson of seconds past. On the table the cardboard marked, "My fault, 7:12, lay half folded. The paper's edge damp where 12 was. Ink bleeding slightly. She set it against the steel ruler, leaving exactly a finger's space for someone to read, if they wanted. No one read just then. Martha turned to make 2 coffees. She set one a handspan from her elbow, said quietly, Keep it away from the dough. She pushed the cup out of the dough's path, didn't drink. The smell of coffee stood there, folding into the yeast. She stood, counting beats with her knuckle tapping the table edge, each slower than the last. I watched the crooked green seal. Now the oven's shine lit its slanted edge brighter. Wind from the back door touched the paper. It trembled once, then stilled. When the oven opened the third time, the steam didn't hit her face. The loaves' bellies opened along the cuts. Like someone speaking just enough. No one clapped. No need. The ruined first batch still sat by the bin. The words, "My fault, 712" still marking it. She didn't erase. Martha didn't cover it. I didn't move. Jake didn't come. And the silence in the kitchen then, if put on the scale, might weigh as much as the loaf just risen. No one had bitten. No one had praised. Only dough gone the right way, blade at the right depth, and the distance between a craftsperson and her mistake. Close enough to see it, far enough to start again. The morning after the failed batch, word ran a different way. At the barber shop, they said she knows the trade. At the gas counter, they repeated it like weather news. No one praised a name. They only changed the verb. Near noon, a man wearing a town council badge stopped at the counter. Striped shirt, pale brown tie, sweat dark in the middle of his back. He didn't order. He set down a stapled stack. An application for renting the Miller warehouse. All blanks. The final signature box white as glass. With his fingertip, he smoothed the paper's edge flat, leaving no crease. "Leave it here." His voice was as flat as eyes stopping at liability guarantee. No frown, just pressed her index finger on that blank longer than the others. Then she set the stack in the cleanest corner of the counter. No fold, no hiding. Noon passed under the sound of cleavers splitting steaks in the hot kitchen. Each strike broke a ring of fat. The noise laid over the papers like a fine layer of dust. By afternoon, the sky rounded to sun and darkened fast. The back door opened a crack, hinges not squealing. Jake didn't knock. He hung on a steel hook a sand-colored canvas bag, frayed at the edge. The bag had weight, thick straps. He left it, didn't call a name. I saw inside. The tip of a pair of heat gloves, a steel ruler with worn marks, and a folded invoice for 50 pounds of flour. The invoice bore his name, the payer line written by hand, straight strokes, no flourish. He stood on the second step, hat brim down, other hand in pocket, shoulders not leaning. She was pulling a tray from the oven. Heat hit her forehead, hair sticking at the temple. Martha saw the bag, gave one small nod, not at anyone. She carried it in with her left hand, set it by the brick wall just under the salt mark from the leak. She pulled the items one by one, gloves to the second shelf, ruler laid parallel to the counter edge, invoice pressed flat, edge smoothed. She folded the invoice's corner in by 2 centimeters to keep it down. She didn't say, "Thank you." He didn't say, "You're welcome." The back door shut without sound. On the counter, the warehouse rental form still sat with the guarantee box blank. She placed the steel ruler along its edge, pressed one light line, only to make it sit straight. 2 days later, the Miller warehouse owner came. Fedora, hair silvered at the temples, a heavy ring of keys in hand, clinking. He stood where the light didn't touch, his face in shadow. His voice was as even as reading an electric bill. "Warehouse can be signed. Needs guarantee." Jake was then at the back door, his shadow stretched through the frosted glass into a long shape. He stepped half in, enough for his voice to reach the counter. "No guarantee," he said. "I put down equipment deposit. She's on the name." Martha's hands stopped at the faucet for exactly 1 beat. She looked up at the keys, not at the man. Then she lowered her eyes to the blank guarantee box. Didn't blink. "I hear you," said the warehouse owner. He put the keys in his pocket, took out another piece of card, wrote a few slanted words in ballpoint, his coat hanging on the door a moment, then gone. Silence long enough to hear the exhaust fan change speed. I looked at the steel ruler. It lay along the paper's edge, the bright side flush with the printed line. Exact. The bank called that afternoon. The caller was the blonde secretary, her voice caught between friendly and procedural. Expense sheet. Cash flow. Forecast. Flour invoice. Gas receipt. Depreciation. Words dropped over the phone like widely spaced nails. She sat at the steel counter, an empty ballpoint in her hand. The clicker made no sound. She shook the pen 3 times, tested it on the paper's edge. A pale gray mark, not enough. She retraced it, pressing over the faint print. Each letter, each number, each line. Item, flour 50 pounds, price. She laid the pen flat, used the ruler's edge as a guide, pulled 1 line. The ink was dark at the start, fading thin. She filled the thin part again, letters slow but even. The roof leak returned when the rain came back, sudden. Not single drops now. It spread into a long streak. Water crawled from the roof nail down, met the old salt mark, split into 2 lines, rejoined at the basin's rim. The fall's tone had changed, from a tap to a softer sound, like breath into cloth. She slid the basin in by half a handspan, set a stainless bowl beside it for the stray drops. Each drop was a beat. She wrote in time with them, using the rain as a metronome. Line for electricity. 2 tube lights, 1 fan, proofing oven. Line for gas. Previous reading, current reading. Line for labor. Dishwashing hours, oven hours, cleanup hours. The forecast column. 1 box blank. She stopped her pen, listened to the drops, filled it with 0, not for lack of knowing, because it wasn't time to invent. The pen clogged at depreciation. She pulled the refill, shook it. A bead of ink spat onto her knuckle. The blue pooled into a tiny grain. She rubbed it on the dry towel, leaving a streak like a cut line. She traced the word again, the stroke even, not pretty. Correct. Martha passed by, set down a small bottle of glue. Not to stick anything, just to keep the paper's edge from catching the wind. She placed it on the board's corner, square with the word total. Drops fell even. 1, 2, 3. The wall clock in the kitchen was 5 minutes off from the phone. She didn't adjust it. She counted by rain. Night came to the kitchen before it reached the yard. The leak line lengthened by a finger joint. The pen thinned its ink. She switched to a second, black, the line thick like a border mark. The door pulled a roll of seals from his pocket. Fresh green, light glue, brittle paper. He peeled one, stuck it. It fell crooked 3 degrees, lower edge tilted toward the oven. His shadow split in 2 across the sticker. He pressed, smoothed. The glue took poorly, air bubble trapped at center like an eye. He stepped back, looked, marked several boxes on his clipboard. Pencil sharp, dry sound. She lifted the steel ruler from the edge of last week's rental form, stood at an angle, set one end against the seal's edge, pressed lightly, pulled slow. Didn't tear it, just shifted. The glue hissed faintly under the ruler. The bubble slid to the edge, popped in two silent bursts. The seal lay straight, deviation at 0. She let go, set the ruler back where it was, edge parallel to the counter. The inspector looked at the counter, the seal, the ruler's position. He gave one nod without sound, wrote another mark in his form, tore off a copy, folded it once. He walked the kitchen's perimeter, touched nothing. The back door opened for him, closed on a gust. Martha laid her palm on the oven, gauging its heat like a child's forehead. She didn't smile. She didn't breathe out. The woman pulled the My Fault 0712 board from the counter's corner, clipped it to the warehouse form, slid it under the glue bottle. The door seal was still, the leak half dry, the ruler clean alongside. By noon, word in town had shifted again. Seals on. They said it like grasses cut or bulb replaced. She rubbed the blue ink stain still on her knuckle. It didn't come off. It would be gone after 2 days of dishwashing. No one needed to know. That was enough. On the counter, the cost sheet lay flat, corners uncurled. 2 inks, strokes over strokes, like wood grain, sun-hardened. Numbers not pretty, numbers right. No drop fell, basin dry. No applause, no credit given. Only a straight seal, a steel ruler lying still, and one person at the oven, on time. The morning opening brought no banner, no balloons. Glass door cleaned last night, a towel's dry streak still crossing one corner. The smell of cooled yeast hung at the ceiling. Outside, rain fine as dust, just enough to darken the street one shade. I came in through the back, past the narrow lane beside the flour bin. On the steel counter, the ruler lay beside yesterday's used razor blade. A stack of brown wrap paper. Kitchen towel hanging near the sink, corner embroidered with a crooked S. She flipped each switch. Tube lights came. Yeast bread. No logo. Bread baked before dawn was already lined on the wooden rack, 3 cuts showing white crumb in the middle, crust even dark. She lifted one loaf, tilted it to hear the crust hit the counter. Thin, dry. Heat still there, not burning. She set the first loaf in the display tray, the old box cutter beside it, blade retracted. Wall clock moved past 7:58, then stalled a notch in the damp. The garbage truck sound reached the corner. Yellow lights swept the glass, raindrops in a row before the door. The door opened, bell chiming twice, soft. The driver stepped in, reflective jacket soaked, baseball cap pulled low. He stripped off gloves, wrung one, water running in a line across the mat. No one said, "Welcome," no need. She pointed to the loaf in the tray like pointing to an empty seat. He nodded, pulled a wallet. A $5 bill, wet with rain, edges rounded, soft. He set it on the counter. The paper stuck to the glass, leaving a watermark under United. She took the S-embroidered towel, dabbed the bill once, not pressing hard. The fabric lifted most of the water, the letters clearing. She set the bill in the drawer, edge facing left like every other bill. She wrapped the bread in brown paper, folded one seam, sealed with clear tape, tearing the tape with her nail so the edge stayed clean. He took it, nodded. Bell rang again as the door opened. The truck backed up, yellow lights turning, water trail rolling into the street. No banner, but the smell of bread stretched out the doorway in a thin strand. The second customer was an old woman holding an umbrella with one broken rib. She looked at the tray, at her, at the door's inspection seal. She pulled a 10, no change needed, slid it to the tip tray near the register. Thin stainless tray, base dented in a curve. The 10 lay over the dent, didn't slip. The third was the schoolteacher, red wool scarf at her neck. She counted coins from her pocket, made $5 in heavy change. She carried the loaf with both hands like holding a child. She regularly to set, no one took a picture. Only the air inside warmed with each breath. Rain stayed fine as sifted flour. The fourth, fifth, and sixth customers came spaced apart. Each space the time it took a crust to cool half a degree. The sound of wrapping paper, tape tearing, the drawer shutting. She moved through each motion as if rehearsed 100 times. Fold, smooth, set, slide. No wasted gesture. The seventh stood at the end. Jake, hat on, coarse coat. He stood that morning. She pushed the loaf to the counter's edge, hands not touching. He took it, nodded. From his inner pocket, he pulled a paid parking ticket. The red paid stamp slanted across it. Old staple hole in the top edge. He slid it under the tip tray, pressing it into the arc scratch so it stayed. No word. The person behind stepped aside to let him pass. Door opened. Bell rang again. Outside, rain grained the car's windows. He opened the door, got in, started the engine, like every morning. His right hand went to his chest pocket, pulled the ranch logo he'd removed last night. A fabric patch with a pressed-in bowl, heavy stitching, and tossed it onto the back seat. It landed without sound. He set the loaf on the passenger seat, did not bite. The truck rolled, no throttle burst. Tail lights faded in the rain. Inside, the tip tray kept the ticket flat under the steel's thin base. Paid showed faint through the metal. No one noticed. She squared the coins with the counter's edge, slid each into the till. The kitchen towel back on its hook, S turned to the wall. The afternoon dropped slow. Rain stopped, the awning dripped its last. Rack emptied, paper stack halved. Doormat outside gained pale smudges of mud. A child pressed his nose to the glass. Fogged around, drew an S, ran. His mother tugged him away, apology in her eyes. She wiped the fog with the towel's corner, left no streak. Toward evening, streetlights came on in clusters. Wind crossed the door's inspection seal, shook it once, soft as a tap. She slid the steel gate's latch halfway up to let air in, hooked it. Metal met metal, a dull note. The yeast bread sign's shadow tilted left. She counted the till again. The wet 5 from morning was dry, flat. She stacked it with the others, edges even as a ruler. The ledger open, one box empty. She wrote 7 in retail morning. The My Fault 0712 card stayed clipped to the rental form, under the glue bottle. She shut machines in sequence. Fan, oven light, register. Relays clicked clear in the empty room. Green-handled box cutter hung on its wall nail. Blade in. clean of flour. She wiped the handle once, hung it so the tip mark matched the wall's dent. Below it, the rental form dated in black, clipped at the top. The paid ticket still under the tip tray. Outside, rainwater clung to the sidewalk, breaking the street lights into warped gold spots. No nameplate on the doorframe yet, only glass and passing silhouettes. A cowboy hat drew one long shadow, then vanished. The flagpole at the square gave a late metallic knock. Wind drifted in and out like someone careful not to disturb. She lowered the latch 2 centimeters, just enough for the seal to stir again. Box cutter stayed on its nail. Steel ruler lay across the rental form's edge, parallel to the counter, a silent reminder. Towel dry, S quiet. I half closed the back door. In the last light, the 3 slashes on the final loaf were still sharp, as if someone had stitched them into the day as a mark. No frame, no speech, only the sound of metal, paper, yeast, and wind brushing a green seal just enough to move. Here, opening meant selling at the set price, counting exact, keeping the seals straight. The rest was for the night to hold. In the end, everything stilled, like after a gust. Box cutter on its nail, blade in. Any wound that needs stitching will know when. Seals straight, ruler across. Order quiet but exact. Leak that once marked the hour, half dry today. Tomorrow it may rain again. We just set the basin right. Towel with the crooked S folded, the flaw tucked in. If a mark is worth keeping, keep it. The wet 5 now dry. Paid ticket lying under the tip tray, a small debt cleared with clean hands. On the loaf, 3 cuts open just enough. In the paper stack, the My Fault 0712 board under the glue bottle. Not erased, kept as a marker. Enough for one day in this wind-worn place. If any object stays with you, the retracted knife, the straight seal, the dry leak mark, or the crooked S, tell it, briefly, like placing a dried bill on the counter, then leaving. The rest, let the night keep.